Acharya Chautara Sarashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Jagaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinatha Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Gita Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Navri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Naraskricham Naram Chaivam Namotramam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, Third canto, chapter 7, text 34.
Yes.
Dhanasya tapaso vapi yaj cheshta purutaya palam prabhasa sasya yo dharmo yash cha pumsa utapadi Dhanasya tapaso vapi yachchesta purutaya palam prabhasa stasya yo dharmo yascha pumsa utapadi Dhanasya tapaso vapi yachchesta purutaya palam Prabhasho stasya yo dharma yascha pumso tapadi Dhanasya tapaso vapi yachchesta purutaya palam Prabhasa stasya yo dharma yascha pumso tapadi Dhanasya of charity, tapasaha of penance, vapi lake, yet that which, cha and, ishta endeavor, purutayo of reservoirs of water, palam fruitive result. Prabhasastasya, one who is away. One who is away from home. Yaha, that which. Dharmaha, duty. Yaha, cha, and which. Pumsaha, of man. Uta, described. Apadi, in danger. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Please also describe the fruitive results of charity and penance, and of digging reservoirs of water. Please describe the situation of persons who are away from home, and also the duty of a man in any awkward position. Responsibly. Please also describe the fruitive results of charity and penance, and of digging reservoirs of water. Please describe the situation of persons who are away from home, and also the duty of a man in an awkward position. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The digging of reservoirs of water for public use is a great work of charity, and retiring from family life after 50 years of age is a great act of penance performed by the sober human being. Verse again. Please also describe the fruitful results of charity and penance and of digging reservoirs of water. Please describe the situation of persons who are away from home, and also the duty of a man in an awkward position. Narayanam namaskritam naram chaivam narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat nastaprayeshu abadireshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shlokair bhavati bhaktir naishtiki. Prabhupada describes the digging of reservoirs as a great work of charity. Charity is something that is often talked about by Srila Prabhupada as a great gift. Bali Maharaj is famous for the charity of sacrificing his entire kingdom, his entire possessions, his wife, his children, and the finest of entertainment being the king of the demons, and was established by and he did a very unusual and somewhat controversial thing of rejecting Sukracharya, his guru, the guru of the demonic people. Sukracharya advised him not to take the 3 steps of land, even though he was a dwarf, and said that if he gave everything, that Krishna, who came as a dwarf as Vamanadev, was tricking him into taking everything away. And Bali Maharaj said to Shukracharya, I've been instructed by you from the very beginning of life to give everything to Krishna. Now he wants to just take 3 steps of land. Why shouldn't I give it to him? And he said, Sukracharya said that if you give him what he wants, he will take everything from you. So he rejected his guru, and Prabhupada was very pleased with Bali Maharaj. Or Vamanadev was very pleased with Bali Maharaj. And he installed him as his permanent doorkeeper in a place called Sutala Loka. And he's there today. Bali Maharaj is glorified for his supreme charity. He gave up everything for the service of God. This is a great quality, and it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita that a quality in the 18th chapter of the Brahmins is to give away, is to create acts of charity. The word dhanam is used as generosity. It's incumbent upon all kshatriyas, especially rulers, to be generous, to give in charity. When George Harrison died, his photograph was on the cover of Time magazine, and the then Prime Minister of England, I think his name was Tony Blair at that time, praised him for giving things, for being generous and charity. Even though he was very famous and very wealthy, he was able to give in charity. And it's mentioned in I think it's the Nectar of Devotion, there's a king named Mayuradraj who agreed to give up his whole body and to have his son and wife saw his body in half because the Lord came to him as a Brahmin and asked him to do that. So he's glorified in history as a great giver of charity. He not only gave everything he owned, but he gave his own body. So this is the perfection of Dehino Smin Jata Dehe, the verse in Bhagavad Gita that says that we should not be attached to the body. I was with Prabhupada in 1967, and he gave a talk at Berkeley University. I wrote about this in one of my offerings, and it was in a very, very dark hall at University of California at Berkeley. And at the end of his speech, one of the students asked him, you couldn't see who it was because it was very dark in there, said to him that I have come to study technology at this university, and I'll go back when I have learned it, go back to my native land, which was that part of the world, it was India, and create a better life for everyone. So Prabhupada's answer was instructive, and it was probably the first time I ever saw Prabhupada exhibit anger. And he didn't really even see the person, because no one could see who it was, but he identified the accent, and he said that are you an Indian? You are an Indian. And then he knew, and he said, but you have come to do what a lot of people from my land do. They come to America to beg. They go into the great supermarket of America, or they accept education in places like University of California, and want to learn technology so that they can go back and better life in India. So my point is that you, and he again couldn't see the person, you are a beggar. I am a giver. And he elaborated on that. Giving is another sort of definition or a synonym for charity, that you give everything. And Prabhupada addressed this student as a beggar. You have come to the United States to beg technology. Some people come to beg money. Some people come to beg affluence and various other things, or to beg a spouse. You are a beggar. I am a giver. So what I am giving is knowledge of the Absolute, of knowledge of Krishna. And I'm asking everyone here to give, to be like me, to be a giver. I am a giver, and you are a beggar. That was his, and he was saying it in such a tone that he was very, very angry, and he was perspiring as he spoke this. And everyone that was with Prabhupada, there were a number of devotees with Prabhupada at that time. It was in a hall, kind of on a stage, and everything was very dark. And everyone agreed with Prabhupada. Yes, he was a giver. He was coming to give knowledge of Krishna consciousness. He was coming to give Vaishnavism, not begging from everything that America was the most powerful, most influential, and the strongest country in the world at that time. And many people were coming to the United States to beg, to get more wealth, to get more of everything, and to return to their land with the knowledge that they could improve things. So Prabhupada realized that this person was one of in the beggar category, and he became very angry. He said, "You are coming to beg, and I have come to give. I have come to give everything." And not only was he going to give knowledge, but he was going to give of himself. He's known for his generosity, for his kindness, and for his ability to tell everyone that they have to be Krishna conscious in order to be successful. And in some of his writings, he calls the leaders of the movement miscreants, cheaters, plunderers. I mean, very often he does that. And throughout the purports of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that Prabhupada is pointing an accusing finger at the materialistic way of life, that they have better everything, they have better travel, they have better communications, they have better medicine, but there's something missing. And what is that thing that's missing? That thing that's missing is God. And when Prabhupada first came to London, that was in 1968. Yeah, he was attacked by he was treated to an event in the VIP room of the Heathrow Airport. And when he got off the plane, he underwent all the customs formalities just at the base of the stairway at the bottom of the airplane. There was a man who was representing the customs or immigration people, and he took care of all the formalities. And when and it had been, as it usually happens in London, it had been drizzling and raining, and there were puddles of water all over the tarmac. And some devotees rushed out to greet Prabhupada, And some of them paid their dandavats, full obeisances, and they laid in the puddles of water. And when they got up, their white dhotis and kurtas were all stained with blackish water and pebbles that were in the tarmac. Then Prabhupada came into the VIP room. And when he came into the VIP room, as it had been arranged by people who worked for Apple Records, because the release of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra had been just a few days before, Prabhupada was assaulted by the Fleet, what we call the Fleet Street Boys. They were the middle-aged men, mostly, from the newspapers. They were very dreary newspapers that had, they were called the tabloids. Pictures of half-naked women and you know, just things to pique the public somehow into buying them. And there was a young boy named Dhruvananda whose parents were about to send him to Dallas, and it happened just after the Prabhupada, or just before Prabhupada arrived. And there was a newspaper called The Sun, which was one of the leading tabloids in Britain. I don't know if it still exists, but on the front page there was a picture, a very large picture about the size of this book, of the boy who was going to Dallas. And the extended captions started out saying, "I don't love my mummy anymore." That day, or the next day, I went with that boy to the American Embassy to get a visa, because he was very young. He was only about 4 or 5 years old, and he was going to go to Dallas and become a student of the Gurukul. And somehow or other, the person who was giving out visas, who was taking the applications, I don't know if they had seen the newspaper with a picture of this boy on the cover or not, but the agent immediately granted a visa for this young boy, and he went to Dallas and stayed for some time, and was very good student. So the thing is that he was English, and he had to get a visa to go to America. The thing is that Prabhupada became very angry at this student who said that they were going back to their country, India, to better the way of life there. So Prabhupada was extremely angry, and this was an incident that has been recorded in history. I don't know if this is videotaped or audio taped, but anyway, it was a very significant thing, because after the lecture, one of the student, this particular student, said, "What good is it that you're talking about the things that happened thousands of years ago in different ages and different times? What good is it that you are talking about, that you have a few people who are following you, who want to say that there's a better way of life than the life we're living?" And this student went on to say that, "I have come to this country to do something practical. I've come to learn technology, and with this technology I'm going to go back to my country and better the way of life." So this angered Srila Prabhupada, who was trying to get people to renounce this materialistic way of life, better everything, better way of life, better clothes, better food, and what seems to be better, but it's not really better. And what he was giving was of course, what he said was better. That is generosity. And generosity is not only in the spiritual world, but in the material world, it is highly praised. If one is very wealthy and gives to charity, he is praised. So there was this picture on the cover of Time magazine where the Prime Minister praised one of the British subjects for being generous. That was his saving grace, that he was generous, that he would give of his wealth to others and make others happy. And of course he gave things to us, including Bhaktivedanta Manor. But that is the nature of giving, of generosity. And then Prabhupada talks about the great work of charity in the purport. That charity is not just considered to be a wonderful thing in the material world. People like Ambarish and Maya Dwaj gave, but others too in the spiritual world. But even in the material world, if someone is wealthy and gives of what they have, they are considered very good people. Some very wealthy people have invested in tech companies in Bangalore because they feel that if they have something, that it's meant to be used for the good of human beings. So that's what people are trying to do with generosity. And someone who is very generous is also called a Dhani, D-H-A-N-I, and generosity in general is called dana, or giving. And one who is a giver is a Danavir, just like one who is a religious person is a Dharmavir, like Yudhisthira, who was a great Dharmavir. And there are many other famous people who are known for their charity. So charity is a very good thing. And we find that we, as devotees of Krishna, are also giving in charity. We're giving not our wealth, but our knowledge. And anyone who comes in contact with Krishna consciousness is thought to be a recipient or a potential recipient for this charity. And the best charity is to give Krishna consciousness, is to give of oneself. And devotees are people who come to Krishna consciousness initially are very impressed by not only the food, but the music and the friendliness, but by the charity. The people are very friendly and willing to give of themselves to others. This is an important point, that devotees and Krishna himself is very charitable, is willing to give of themselves, of himself. That is a very important point, dana. So I'll read the verse again, and maybe someone has some comments or questions. Please also describe the fruitive results of charity and penance, penance of digging reservoirs of water. Please describe the situation of persons who are away from home, and also the duty of a man in an awkward position. So digging wells for providing water for people is considered an act of charity, and providing food for beggars is also an act of charity. In India, there are many beggars who have their hands out and are begging, and some of them are professional beggars, and some are just naturally poor. And one devotee used to he had heard Prabhupada say that sometimes these beggars maim them. They intentionally maim themselves. They lose an arm or a leg on a railroad track in order to get more donations. And so this devotee became very, very dismissive of anyone who was a beggar. And then this devotee saw the same people that were begging on Govardhana Puja come to the Vrindavan temples in their finest silk, and they were all dressed up and had given up the profession of begging for giving something to Krishna. So these are some of the definitions. Maybe someone has some questions or comments to ask about charity or anything I've said or anything else. Go ahead. Yes?
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. I was just going to ask on the intentions of giving charity and the charity itself, kind of the differences and what's more important kind of thing. So the intentions whilst you're giving charity, and what kind of acts of charity that you're doing.
Well, the intention of giving in charity is to have the realization that what I have is not mine. Everything belongs to Krishna. As he says in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Loko Maheshwaram, that I am the owner. Krishna says, I am the owner of all planets, everything. Everything we do, everything we eat, everything we say, I am the owner. So if we're able to give some of what we say, some of what we own, whether it's wealth or words, that's a good thing. That's our intention, is to not want everything for ourselves, but to sacrifice everything for the Lord. And one of the definitions of surrender is that we don't want things for ourselves. We want things for Krishna. There was a devotee named Kulavecha Sridhar who lived very simply, and he lived by making plantain or banana leaf plates and cups. Very simple. And Krishna was very pleased with his attitude, and he offered him benedictions. He said, Sridhar, why are you living like this, like such a poor man? There's a leak in your roof, and he went on and on. And Sridhar said, well, I don't want anything for myself. He said, well, like the birds, they live in the trees, and they get plenty of water in rainfall. So I don't want anything for myself. I only want your devotional service. That is the motivation of devotees. They don't want anything for themselves. They want devotional service. So as Rupa Raghunatha will confess, and many devotees who are are giving out books will reiterate that people, they don't necessarily want to take these things, but they're very happy when they get them. Books, because they can read about scriptural knowledge. So devotees, even when they are refused maybe 100 times, if there is one person who says yes and takes a book and agrees to abide by the philosophy, they're very enlivened, even though it's only 1% of their activity. They feel very, very, very happy because they were able to give in charity. So charity is a very good thing, a very good quality for people to have. Yes, Ram?
Can you expand a little on, in the verse it talks of, Vijira asks, what is the duty of a person who finds themselves in a difficult position? What's going on there?
Well, he says the duty of a man in an awkward position. That's the phrase that's given. So one can be in an awkward position if one loses all his wealth. For example, Giriraj once told the story of a man who had a lot of wealth. He was a Kshatriya. And he somehow or other knew how to accumulate a lot of wealth. But he lost it all. Somehow Providence arranged that he would lose everything. And at this time that he lost everything, there was a plague going on in India. And the government was paying money for people who would clean up the city of Delhi. And the city of Delhi had a big rat in the middle of the city. And this Kshatriya who had lost all his wealth approached a Brahmin and said, "What can I do? I have nothing. I have nothing. I had a great wealth and now I have nothing. What can I do? What should I do?" And the Brahmin said, "You see that dead rat out in the street?" He said, "You pick up that rat and you give it to the government. They will give you money. And with that money, you can invest it and you can become wealthy again." And he did exactly what he was suggested to do. He got the rat and he gave it to the government, and the government gave him some money. And with that money, he purchased some oil, and he started selling that oil. And eventually, years later, he became a wealthy man again. So because he had lost everything, and felt very awkward because of that, because his profession was to give, because he was a Kshatriya. That's one of the qualities of a Kshatriya. He was in an awkward position, but he regained his position gradually by following the instructions of a Brahmin. So that story was it's something that I remember that the Giriraj once told the congregation was giving a lecture at the temple in Mumbai. Yes, Rupa?
Maharaj, we're all in an awkward position in the material world, and Prabhupada says in the purport that man should, after the age of 50, renounce his family life. But a number of us in ISKCON sort of got married late, and now we're finding ourselves well over 50 and still caught up in family life in an awkward position. Can you shed some light on this?
Well, it could be said that we're all in an awkward position because we're not buying into the materialistic way of life, and most people consider that if you're Hare Krishna, you're awkward. You're a marginal group. You don't count. But the thing is that Prabhupada was writing these books 30, 40, 50 years ago, and sometimes. I mean, the ideal is to take sannyas at 50 and to give up family life at 50, but it's not always possible. It's kind of awkward for us to do that, especially for those of us who have gotten married when we're 50 or 40 years old. So that's awkward in itself. But Prabhupada is also giving us the ideal, that the ideal situation is to renounce family life at the age of 50, to take sannyas, and to depend upon nature for existence. That's perfection. But not everyone can do it, it's understood. But Prabhupada is giving us what should be done, what was the right thing to do. And so we try, but we're not always successful. But we're at least we're doing our best. Hare Krishna. Yes? No? Something else? One more question.
I've got lots of questions.
Or comment.
Questions. Maharaj, thank you for your presence here on New Govardhana, giving us all your mercy. My question is, in giving, you're explaining that we're meant to be very generous, and give everything. But isn't there some criteria of who we give to? Like if anyone asks us, can we give them, $50? Are we meant to give to them?
Well, there's good giving and not so good giving.
Okay.
And sometimes the professional beggars use the money for sense gratification. And Gopinath Padanayaka, who was a famous tax collector, a relative of Vamananda Roy, was a tax collector, but he was keeping some money for himself. So when he was exonerated from being executed, Lord Chaitanya gave him many things. The king gave him many things. King Pratrapruta gave him a shawl, gave him a greater salary than he had as a tax collector. So as a Kshatriya king, he was very generous. But the thing is that sometimes people misuse their generosity, or they give their generosity to people who use it for sense gratification. So one has to be a little bit intelligent about how generosity is used and who we give money to. So that's the point.
Could you explain that more, please?
Well, there are professional people who use their generosity for things that are good for them. And if someone is intelligent, if the giver is intelligent, he can understand that this person he won't give to that person. So it has to be very carefully thought out about how generosity is given and who it is given to at the right time and place. And it's said in the Bhagavatam that in general people are very generous. And in his house, he said there were always strangers for dinner or lunch. They would share their meals with people. And there's a system called the providing the unwanted guest, or a titi. And there was a devotee who was about to eat after fasting for a long time, and then all of a sudden 3 guests appeared, a titi, uninvited guests, and this devotee gave the last portions of what he was about to eat to them. And it turned out that those 3 people were Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma. But that was charity in the mode of goodness.
Yeah.
So it's also explained that if one doesn't give to strangers, that one is condemned and has to live in hell. So in general, we try to be as generous as possible, but we have to be careful also. And it's also mentioned in the Bhagavatam that if one gives to an unknown person, or makes them comfortable, gives them a seat, gives them a water, his generosity is returned by what Prabhupada calls unlimited multiplication. So charity is a very good thing, and it's always, in general, it is always rewarded. Hare Krishna. So we'll stop there, I think. Yes, one last.
Srila Prabhupada was very fond of referring to ISKCON as the kitchen religion. And he also said charity in this age means giving prasadam. So I wondered if you'd comment on your experiences of how our distribution of prasadam has affected the world.
Well, it does affect the world because, as Prabhupada said, it's the kitchen religion, and that's going to be the name of the restaurant that's now being built in Auckland, New Zealand. The kitchen religion. Ramai has told me that there are more restaurants per capita in this country than any other country. So even though they're not necessarily highly profitable, and Sunday feasts are generally not profitable at all, although they're becoming gradually profitable. Prabhupada at one point asked the people who came to the temple there and in Berkeley to give $1. They also were asked to give in charity. So the idea of giving prasadam, if we're only known as the kitchen religion, that's a benefit because people will think that the Hare Krishna people are doing something worthwhile, something good. Their philosophy may be unusual. They may be dressed in a very unordinary way. They may sing in the streets, and we don't do that. But they give a very, very tasty prasadam. And this temple, for example, has been and still is supported completely by restaurants, by giving food at rock groups. They have their Splendor in the Grass and Woodford and various other things almost every weekend. So that form of giving is helping. It's helping people have a proper attitude towards Krishna. So the more sophisticated things, like the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium in Mayapur, is very difficult. And Harisori has given the opinion that the chandelier that's meant to go in the main sanctuary is never going to happen. There's a smaller one which is explained about the structure of the universe, but the more difficult aspects of our philosophy are not so easily assimilated. And when Prabhupada first came, he was even at 26 Second Avenue. At the end of every lecture, he personally distributed prasadam, because he knew it was very, very important. And he said, no function is completed unless there are refreshments. So that's another example of charity. Charity in the mode of goodness, of course. So I think we will end right there, and that's it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
So let's conclude Maharaj Ki.